The Honda S2000, a car I've driven in so many different forms, so many different examples, but this will be a first because this is a K-swapped AP1. The owner, Jeremy, recently put a K24 JDM engine into this, and this is his full-on track build. I'll put the full list of mods in the video description, but let's start with the dyno results on this K24A engine. With 06 to 08 TSX Cams, Link G4X ECU, a test pipe, and an HKS high-power single exhaust, this dynoed in at 227 wheel horsepower at 7,400 RPM and 185 pound-feet of torque at 5,500 RPM. So that peak horsepower number is actually very similar to a stock AP1 or AP2 engine. But the RPM at which that horsepower is achieved at 7,400 is definitely a bit lower, especially compared to the AP1 engine, which is a 2-liter that revs to 9,000. The big difference here, though, is the torque. 185 pound-feet. That's something like 30 to 40 pound-feet more than a stock even AP2 engine, which is a 2.2 liter. And if you look at the dyno curve, this makes 30 to 40 pound-feet more all the way down from 2,000 RPM basically until 6,000 to 7,000. Then the delta starts to shrink, but the peak power again is about the same. So this should be a lot peppier in the mid-range and make the car overall feel a lot quicker, especially on a tight canyon road where I'm not always ringing it out to its red line. The rev limiter should be just above 8,000 RPM. And we've got some other mods on this as well. Custom 17 by 9.5 inch forged wheels with 255/40/17 Falken RT660 tires. We've got JRZ RS Pro suspension, an AP Racing CP8350 Front BBK kit with the rear RX8 brake conversion using the Mustang rotors and RX8 calipers. We've also got an AP2 Subframe, AP2 Transmission, which has closer ratios than the AP1 that this car came with, and a Seibon Hardtop. When stock, it weighed about 2,800 pounds, but with this passenger seat removed and this bucket seat and the rear interior stripped out and this hardtop, I'm thinking this is probably 2,700 pounds. So let's take this for a drive and see how different it feels to a normal AP1 or AP2. Love this small diameter, probably 320 mil if I had to guess, steering wheel, and the Science of Speed shift knob. I used to have this in my NSX. And I actually like this taller knob in the S2000 because it just shortens the distance between the steering wheel and the shift knob by a little bit. Love these custom shift lights as well. We've got an AIM Solo 2DL here, not going to be using that today. Will the extra torque of the K24 be a game changer? Let's find out. I'll start from 2,000 RPM in second gear and just wind it all the way out. Sound than an S2000 engine. No traction control or stability control being an AP1. Actually not so much the engine, but just the chassis tuning is so good. These JRZ RS Pros, they're hardcore track dampers, but they actually perform very well out here, soaking up all the bumps. And the AP Racing brakes, so much braking confidence. The pedal doesn't have a ton of initial bite, but I actually like it like this. It's more easy to modulate. But back to this K24 engine, I definitely feel the increase in torque, especially from the lower to mid-range of the power band. From around 3,000 to 5,000, that's where I feel it the most. And because this is an iVTEC motor, it has a variable VTEC engagement. It doesn't have that super pronounced crossover at 6,000 like the stock AP1 or AP2. impressive. What a car. I love the combination of this K24 motor with a close ratio AP2 gearbox. It makes the car feel so lively at all times. You're always in the power band now. Even with a stock AP2 engine with AP2 transmission, there are times when you feel like, man, I wish the VTEC engagement was a couple thousand RPM lower. And even when you do lower it through tuning, it doesn't give you that same torque output that this 2.4 liter gives you. And while we're paused here, in terms of the engine sound, it's not maybe as high pitched as the F-series, even when I rev it out to the same roughly 8,000 RPM. But it's still definitely a naturally aspirated high revving VTEC Honda engine note. Just a little bit different than what I'm used to. Listen to this. Shift quite frequently with this AP2 gearbox. Oh my god, this is good. The suspension's definitely a little bit more track focused than canyon focused. Like I said back there, some of the bigger bumps still do make the rear feel a little bit unsettled, but it's actually quite streetable. We have polyurethane engine mounts, which are obviously a lot stiffer than OEM, but at least they're not solid mounts, and they actually do transmit some vibration into the cabin, but not too bad. This car doesn't feel as tin can as I actually thought it would. It's a fairly streetable track build, and the fact that we don't even have any aero means that this car will really test the driver's skill level. A non-aero S2000 with square wheel and tire setup. It's a very, very lively car at the limit. And I think that's what Jeremy enjoys about this setup. He hasn't actually tracked the car with the K-series yet. The stock engine, he did a 124.6 at Thunderhill West and a 202 at Thunderhill East. Pretty fast times for a non-aero S2000. Woo, it's moving around. Oh yeah. Very lively car. What an experience. K24 S2000. This engine has more potential still. If you were to build it up, this could be making 250 plus wheel horsepower and probably 200 pound-feet of torque at the wheels. But even as it stands, this is a big, big difference from a stock F-series. Let me demonstrate that one more time here. The outright acceleration isn't that different, but the difference here is that when you're cornering, you don't have to hunt for gears as often. You can leave it in third where you otherwise might have had to drop it into second, and you still have good torque. So you spend less time shifting in the corners, and you can stay on the throttle more effectively, and you can just modulate it rather than having to worry about what RPM you're at. That will help you shave time at the track. So I'm very curious to see now with otherwise the same setup, what Jeremy is able to do in terms of lap times with this engine versus his old 2-liter F20C. I think that'll be the big test, because again, the peak horsepower pretty much the same as before. This is just such a good car. An S2000 with proper suspension, brakes, and some weight savings. It's just such a fun car to drive. I've said it so many times, and I'll keep doing it, and I'll keep doing these S2000 reviews as long as owners keep offering. It's one of my favorite cars, and I really hope to own another one in the future. Hell, maybe I'll put a K24 in it and take it to the track and just have a ton of fun. In so many ways, this is the more enjoyable driving experience at the limit compared to an NSX, even my NSX, which I've tuned specifically for driving pleasure. What a car! And as much as I love my NSX right there, this thing is just more lively. The S2000 will always hold a special place in my heart. So let me know what you think about this K24 swapped S2000 build. Full list of mods in the video description. A big shout out to Jeremy. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you very soon.